And that has been my goal, that it is public service. As an example, helping our Palolo housing tenants in getting new homes and units that they are getting today. Also helping the residents of Laie Road. If you've ever been in the back of Palolo Valley, that particular area was all surface water that they use. Today we have a water tank way in the back of the valley, which I'm so proud that it is servicing those particular residents of Laie Road. Public schools, I've helped Jarrett Middle School, Palolo Elementary, Kaimiki High School, the athletics department, for Palolo Elementary School, the ecology program that Ms. Silverstein had promoted, and all the other programs. But I'm also very proud that we are very, very accepting in getting other programs into the district that I do represent. And I'm very proud of another school that I should share with the general public, and that is Anuenue School, one of the first Hawaiian immersion schools in the state of Hawaii from K to 12.
And is there anything special you would like to say to your community?
The community at this point I'd like to share with them is to say thank you very much for the privilege and opportunity. I hope I'm doing a pretty good job after 37 years and 14 years as a Speaker of the House. And I'm just happy that with the opportunity that you've given me, I've helped a lot of individuals and families throughout the district and the state of Hawaii.
Well, thank you, Calvin Say, for your time.
Thank you very much, and I hope to see you someday running for public office, Troy, after you graduate from college and getting a degree maybe in public administration or social services. But in the meantime, you folks will be the future leaders in the next decade.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
We hope you enjoyed Youth Capital Commentary from the State Capitol.
Remember, when your hands are dirty, wash your hands in water first. Then you put a squirt or two of soap. Scrub your hands for at least 20 seconds. Then wash all the dirt off with water. After you grab a paper towel to wipe your hands, then you throw your trash away. Thank you for keeping good hygiene.
Aloha everybody. My name is Walter Reedy. I'm at the State Capitol. This is the House of Power in the state of Hawaii. There's so much power in this state, all centralized on this island, and on this island centralized in this building. So it's important for us to be at this building. We were here last year trying to raise our voices. We filled this whole rotunda with people, and we tried to give some direction to the governor and to the people in this building. So we're going to come back again. And it's going to be important that we don't just come one time and think we're going to solve all the problems. We got to constantly come to this building about where they're taking us. They're destroying our environment while they're trying to build the economy. And the reason is that instead of following the will of the people about how we're going to build an economic base, they're following the guys on the top, the 1% guys, who are telling this building how they're going to build the economy. So that's the problem we have in this building. So if people don't show up in this building to say, that's not the direction we want to go, the 1% guys are profit motivated. So much so that they're making all the money and we're doing all the work and we're suffering over here. So to come together. So we're going to provide that opportunity on the 29th of this month, January, the 29th Wednesday, 10 o'clock in the morning. We want to fill this building again. So we're inviting all the people out there that have groups that are trying to protect the things they want to protect, and they're trying to say, this is not right, this is where we should be going, this is a problem, and nobody's listening, right? Nobody's listening to you. You're on Molokai and nobody ever listens to us on Molokai. So we come over here and try gangy with everybody and try to give the same message to this building. So we're going to be here on the 29th, and we're going to have a stage, we're going to have microphones, all of the different people that have projects like Kaka'ako right down the street. Did you know that that's going to be the third city, and that the buildings are going to go skyrocketing into the sky without any ceilings? I don't know where that came from, but it's happening. So the people from Kaka'ako are coming. They're going to march to the rally in the morning. If you want to join that march, it's going to happen at the park in Kaka'ako. Great. Our responsibility on this side is that the Hawaiians have gotten together. We found ourselves stage, sound system, chairs. We're going to be responsible for the rally. And we're asking everybody that would like to take a message to these people upstairs to join us. Bring your banners, bring your concerns, gather into your groups, and we all together send messages to these guys. So it's going to be really, really important. And I'm here doing this thing to try and encourage you guys. Let's make this place a people's place. It's not a place for the corporations to dictate where we're going in Hawaii. That's what's happening now. It's a dead-end street. We're losing, we cannot drink the water in our streams. No more fish in the ocean. They're blasting all poisons in our land. We got to make some changes. Aloha.
If anybody else would like to get to know more about what you're saying and doing or want to help, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah. First, go in the phone book. I listed RITI phone book. If you into the Facebook stuff, I'm on Facebook. If you do email, rittew@hotmail.com. We're going to put out a blast of flyers and everything to let you guys know about the rally coming on the 29th. And it's your job to pass that on, and pass it on so everybody shows up. Aloha. Aloha. Yeah.
Predisposed, people have the right to choose and not be bothered for it, and not be beat up for it, and not be, you know, killed in some cases for it, you know, if that's their choice. Right. Which leads me to bullying. Do you think that bullying should be legislated by the DOE, or should it be the government, or where do you think that, who should take the lead in that? Where should that come from?
I'm trying to remember my upbringing in school and bullying, and it wasn't, I guess maybe in Canada. You don't see it as much. I went to a public elementary school, and that, it wasn't, you know, such a huge issue. But coming here is when I've noticed the kinds of experiences that people have had that have made it a major issue these days. I think it's more about educating from when kids are younger and when they're, you know, in the beginnings of school, if that's where it starts to happen, because I suppose it could even happen before that, right, in families or whatnot too, right, because there's lots of different examples of bullying. So,
so like, there's always going to be bullying, because there's always the differences. Like, there's always going to be the goth,
the jocks, and the cheerleaders.
Yeah, there's always going to be the cliques, and there's always going to be that fear that pushes people to act out.
I think with the internet now, oh my gosh, all of a sudden it's socially acceptable to, you know, just blast somebody. And I think cyberbullying, but now because that's so acceptable on the internet, it's kind of leaking out and overflowing, and that's kind of the character now that a lot of young people have, where it's okay to just trash talk somebody. Now it's socially acceptable because they're online all day long, and so they see it.
It's hard, especially with the LGBT community, because there's already that whole big thing about teaching our kids to be gay in the schools, and so competency around LGBT. It's hard because now they're going to be like, well, now you're teaching my child that it's okay to be gay.
I think there's such a broad spectrum now, and I mean, legislation I think is really important, but how, as humanity, how do we really change that? Because obviously you can't just tell kids, don't bully, okay, everything's all right. There needs to be some systems in place that protect children.
All right, this next song is called Blow My Cover.
Particularly with the youth nowadays, bullying is a really big issue.
Yeah.
And would you have any personal stories of times that you had been bullied just because you were different, either on the basis of sexual orientation or in general?
I grew up just not even worrying about what people thought about me, and you know, there was a time in my life where I felt like, you know, alone, but I never was bullied. I don't know if you guys have any.
I actually have.
Really?
I was, well, I guess that kind of stems from, I'm the youngest of three, so, and three boys, nonetheless, so, you know, I was always picked on. I was always, you know, last in everything at home, and I guess growing up with that, I just kind of accepted it. So when I started, like, hanging out with people, like, in, like, elementary school and stuff, it was really easy for people to pick on me, and I got picked on a lot. I got called all kinds of names, and I would turn it off, but you know, every now and then it takes a good little bite out of you. Specifically, they would make fun of me, and sometimes they would use terms towards homosexuality towards me in a hurtful way. And I grew up, my mom, very liberal person, and she always told me to accept people for who they are. And so whenever those came across as hurtful, I would always think to myself, like, that's not really an insult. You're meaning it as one, but I can't take it as one, because I didn't grow up with, like, thinking that way.
That's an important thing to note, is that the language that's being used in schools, when you hear kids throwing around, and I'm sure all of us have heard this, kids say, you know, you're gay, even if it's either they perceive sexual orientation or not, they're just using it as a derogatory term. But people are, you know, you hear the word faggot thrown through the hallways and people calling each other gay, and it's not only hurtful to those that are being bullied, if it's being told to you personally, but also to those around that are hearing those words, and those who might be LGBT. That sets a precedent for the environment at the school, where if that's common and people are using those words in a negative way, kids might not feel safe to be who they are or be genuine, because they think that they're going to have negative consequences. So,
which is why I think that with what's going on with current artists, popular artists coming out and even expressing their support for the gay community, that helps. That helps kids, you know, because whatever people deal with, you know, at school, you go through your day, you deal with bullying, you deal with any kind of derogatory term towards you. You can go home and you can go listen to your favorite artist. You can go, and that's personal, and that helps people.
I'm not safe. No, I'm not safe. Oh, 'cause you blow my cover. And I'm not safe anymore. Yeah, you blow my cover. No, I'm not safe anymore.
On the air, we do it handstand.
Aloha and good morning. Welcome to the Committee on Agriculture and Committee on Tourism. This Thursday, January 30th, 9 a.m., conference room 312. This is primarily decision making initially, so thank you everybody for joining us. And I want to share one thing. I'm going to make a habit of trying to introduce a local product that I just fell in love with. And this one is called Adobo Loco Hot Sauce, Maui no Ka'oi. And this is so good. This is a nice little startup company. You can go online and actually there's a cute little video about how they got started. Essentially, they had extra peppers in the yard and they were doing a homeschool project. So anyway, local business, local food is happening right here, right now. Okay.
Is it labeled GMO?
Oh, one more day. We didn't get through without the words. GMO. Okay, so first up is HB 772 relating to land use, and I'm going to recommend we pass this as is. I know there was a little confusion in the testimony, but this bill came from Department of Agriculture, and then DPP, I believe, supported it. There was some confusion initially. And it's essentially trying to make sure if you're doing ag tourism, which is allowed, that you're doing bona fide agriculture. So it's just making some clarifications. I think the language is good. So any questions, members?
You have comments? Okay.
Sure, go ahead. Rep. Cachola.
I think we should tighten the bill further because there's no maximum amount of number of rooms that any farmers can put. By doing that, we'll be competing with our number one industry, opening the hotel industry, the bed and breakfast, and others. So if you don't put a cap on what they can do, it can be abused by coming up with a huge accommodation facility for everyone to use. So we should at least cap it.
Sure. I still have some concerns in regard to how we're going to determine what is a balanced amount of revenue from actual farming practice and income, and what is going to be income from this agritourism business. And the other issue that I have a concern about is also the food safety issue of having people on farms that are not employees of the farm, and what would be possible liabilities regarding those issues. So I will be voting with reservations.
Okay. And just to clarify that, tourism is already allowed on these farming facilities. And so all these questions about food safety, we still have them. And I also just want to let folks know that they're not planning to build hotels on ag land. This is more of a small, there's actually not that many farms that are going to be able to do this. But I appreciate everybody's concerns, and I want to also remind everybody this is the first hearing, and this has a long way to go. There's 2 more committees that it has to go through. So if you have those concerns, we'll let the chair and the next committee know. With that, thank you, members.
Madam Chair, is it possible to put my comments as part of the committee report?
The committee report about the number of units. Yeah, no problem. No problem. I would do that. All right. Thank you, Vice Chair. Please take the vote.
Okay, House Bill 772, the recommendation is to pass unamended. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes with reservations. Representative Awana?
Reservations.
Representative Brower?
Aye.
Representative Cachola?
WR.
Representative Choi?
Reservations.
Representative Ono?
Reservations.
Representative Tokioka?
Reservations.
Representative Suji?
Reservations.
Representative Matsumoto?
Reservations.
Representative Ward?
Ward.
Reservations. You're the last one.
Chair, recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members.
Okay, Committee on Tourism. On House Bill 772, recommendation is to pass unamended. Chair Brower.
Aye.
Vice Chair Cachola.
WR.
Representative Awana.
Reservations.
Representative Choi.
Reservations.
Representative Ono.
Reservations.
Representative Onishi votes with reservations. Representative Takai. Excused. Representative Tokioka.
Reservations.
Representative Tsuji.
Reservations.
Representative Ward.
Reservations.
The chair recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to HB 491, I passed out a proposed draft and essentially taking out any specific reference to the INA Institute and changing the funding to an RFP procurement process. I think that was a very good idea, and it's just the way that we need to do things in government. And I am very enthusiastic and appreciative of the INA Institute for coming in and really educating us about the critical need for this type of information. And we can really help farmers if we put a little time in and talk about what is going to maximize their profits and how they can do it. So I really do appreciate all that discussion. With that, members, any questions? Okay. Sure.
Thank you. I unfortunately just got this morning, and I didn't really have the chance looking at some of the other bills to go over it. So I will be voting reservations, although I agree with the concept, and I know that we're trying to broaden the scope of the previous bill so that more people would be able to hopefully get resources to accomplish your goal, or the goal. But for now, I'll be voting with reservations as I haven't been able to make sure all the dots are connected. But I'm sure they are. But I just wanted to so thank you for work on this, Chair. I know it's going to be moving on to finance, where I am a member of it. Vote in the next one.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair.
Chair. Oh, one more.
Mayor Cachola.
I will also be voting with reservation. It's good that it's more or less going to go through the procurement process. But I read in one of these documents that I have, the summary that it says granulate. So it says granulate.
Granulate? Grant and aid.
Yes.
Oh no, this is it's from advice. Have you read the long version, Cachola?
Yeah, but I was listening to you. But I just want to make sure that what is written here is different from what your recommendation will be. And I like the procurement process so that everybody will have a chance to bid.
Yes, I agree. Thank you for that. Okay, Mr. Chair.
Okay, on House Bill 491, HD1, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes aye. Representative Awana.
Reservations.
Representative Brower.
Aye.
Representative Cachola.
WR.
Representative Choi.
Aye.
Representative Ono.
Aye.
Representative Tokioka.
Reservation.
Representative Tsuji.
WR.
Representative Matsumoto.
Aye.
Representative Ward.
Aye.
Chair recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving to HB 1333. A draft was sent to everybody's office. Essentially, we're doing some minor changes to try to get a definition of food. And although that sounds easy, it's quite difficult. And here we simply say food means agricultural produce for human consumption. And
Yes.
What bill are you on? 1532.
1533.
There's one more bill.
What about 32?
Oh, 1532, I will defer. My apologies. tricky.
Somebody's awake.
Okay, let's start again.
So, HB 1532, I will defer for now. HB 1533. So this is the simple change. Any questions? Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Okay, House Bill 1533, recommendation is to pass the amendment. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes aye. Representative Awana. Aye. Representative Brower.
Aye.
Representative Pachola.
Aye.
Representative Choi.
Aye.
Representative Ono.
Aye.
Representative Tokioka.
Aye.
Representative Suji.
Aye.
Representative Matsumoto.
Aye.
Representative Ward.
Aye.
Chair, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving to HB 1535, and I sent out a draft to everybody, and this is just potentially huge for our youth. And we worked on the language a little bit to make it an RFP similar to the food waste issues. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to support Hawaii youth and agriculture. So I appreciate everybody's work on this. Any questions? Okay, Vice Chair.
Okay, on House Bill 1535, recommendation is to
HD1.
Yeah, to pass with amendment. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes aye. Representative Awana.
Aye.
Representative Brower.
Aye.
Representative Pachola.
Aye.
Representative Choi.
Aye.
Representative Ono.
Aye.
Representative Tokioka.
Aye.
Representative Suji.
Aye.
Representative Matsumoto.
Aye.
Representative Ward.
Aye.
Chair recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving to HB 1989, we also sent out a new draft, and I really want to appreciate Ken Grace and CTAR's role in helping redraft this. So it's essentially taking the existing on-farm mentoring program and expanding on it and appropriating funds.
Madam Chair, how about House Bill 1918?
We're deferring that bill for now.
Don't you get the picture?
Well, I just want to make sure. Somebody's
I'd like to see you on your toes. Just checking.
Okay, now you gotta start all over.
1989.
So, on-farm mentoring. Any questions? HB 1989.
HD1.
HD1, yes. Everybody got a copy? Yeah? So that is, it's instead of developing a new program, which was the initial draft, it's essentially taking the existing program and expanding on it so that farmers can come in to mentor others. And it's just a great way for farmers who are actually willing to teach other people how to compete with them, but because they've been so successful. So we're real excited about this. But any questions? All right.
Chair,
Yes.
real quickly. Again, I was dealing with a lot of constituents yesterday, so I haven't been able to read the new amendment, but with trust to you, I will be voting yes.
Okay. Vice Chair.
For clarification.
Yes.
Because what you said is you will be having a mentoring program whereby farmers will train farmers.
Yes.
So the farmer will also train farmers. How do you
They're
define?
farmers to be. Farmers who will be training farmers to be. Yeah.
Maybe
And you should really look at the language in this bill. It's excellent. I mean, this is
I just
salt
want
of
to
the earth.
clarify
Yeah.
that the farmer is going to train farmers to be rather than train farmers.
Yes. Got it.
That's a
Okay.
big difference. Okay?
Thank you.
Shall train or may train?
Yeah, that's what I said.
That's what I
Or fast track train. The real system. Okay.
Vice Chair.
Okay, on House Bill 1989, recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes aye. Representative Awana.
Aye.
Representative Brower. Representative Cachola.
Aye.
Representative Choi.
No reservations.
Representative Ono.
Aye.
Representative Tokioka.
Aye.
Representative Suji.
No, you are.
Representative Matsumoto.
Aye.
Representative Ward.
Aye.
Chair recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. And I would like to defer these two other measures till the end of our 9:20 a.m. agenda today, if that's all right. Any questions? We just defer decision-making for those last two to the end of our 9:20 agenda. Okay, with that, we are adjourned. Mahalo.
I sign it? Yeah.
Thursday morning, January 30th, 9:20 a.m., Agenda Conference Room 312. Welcome, everybody, and we have a lot of bills on the agenda this morning, so I'm going to ask you to stand on your written testimony if you can, but if you feel you need to explain, that's fine, but try to keep it to 2 minutes, if you would, and we will do questions at the end. And I also want to make an announcement for everybody, legislators and the public. On February 4th at 4 p.m. in the auditorium, we will be showing the Little Fire Ant video. So if you've heard anything about it, but you haven't seen this video, I highly recommend you come see it. You really can't understand until you have witnessed some of the stories that people have to tell about what's happening. And the Little Fire Ant is in Hawaii, so that is one reason we are really highlighting and emphasizing these invasive species issues. So with that, I would like to start with HB 2180. First testifier, Scott Enright, Department of Agriculture. Okay, thank you, thank you. Ann Alvarez, in support. Devin Takara Sitar, in support. Yun Sung Khan, in support. Samir Connell, in support. Wei Wen Su, in support. Sharian Witt, opposition. Lin Hao, in support. Okay, we also have a few late testifiers. Chris Manfredi, Hawaii Farm Bureau. Brian.
Chair, the Hawaii Farm Bureau stands on written testimony in support.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Eric Tanoue, President, Hawaii Floriculture and Nursery Association, in support. Maria Gallo. Sitar, Ding. Ken? Aloha.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha. Aloha, members of the committee, Chair, Vice Chair. I'll make it very short, but just please, I'd encourage you, if you have time, to take a look at the written testimony from Dean Gallo. And speaking for the college and the university, we do support this bill. Of course, as long as it does not replace priorities in the biennium budget. I just wanted to say really quickly that this bill is a little different. A lot of the bills that you're hearing this session are things to fix things. They're to fix errors of their omissions of the past. They're filling pukas. This one isn't. This one is actually looking forward. Okay. The goal here is to model integrated, sustainable farm. What does it look like? How do you do it? And is to integrate research and demonstration along with an educational component. Kind of an educational center, if you will. We can't do that with the funds obviously included here, but it's a pilot project for that purpose. We're targeting at this point, the location that we've discussed for this is our Waile'e experiment station on the North Shore. Is severely in need of something. And this is an excellent location, we feel, to do this kind of a combined, integrated research and production farming and waste management and energy production operation. And all of those factors initially emphasizing water reclamation, conversion of waste from farming and existing waste products in organic waste into biofuels and saleable products to kind of have a sustainable, and the idea is to produce your energy, do it right there, produce products out of it, essentially no input, no output type system. And that's what we're attempting to develop and model that location. We have a lot of faculty cooperating on that. So I thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Alan Gottlieb, Hawaii Cattlemen's Council, in support. Ken Grace, in support. Ashley Lukens, in support. Ashley Stokes, in support. Is there anyone else here to testify on this matter? Okay, members, questions?
Sure.
Oh, yep, who's down there? Troy?
A few decades ago, I audited that farm. What condition is it in now?
Not very good. Unfortunately, a lot of our off-campus facilities are not very good at the moment.
Yeah, it was terrible back then, and it's even worse now. There were vines growing through the buildings. Buildings are falling down.
We've attempted to do what we can, but I suspect if you audit it now, you might have the same impression. But we can do things with it, and that's what we hope to accomplish here. It's taking something that's a bit of an eyesore and using it. And it's that location, if you aren't familiar with it, is, I know you are, but it's a model of the Apuaha. I mean, it literally is mountains to the sea. And it has some waste issues. There's a pond there that has some waste issues. So it's actually, and there's a wetlands. So it's actually a really good place to try to develop and model this kind of technology.
Okay. Would it require any kind of capital improvement money?
What we're trying to do is work around that. In other words, it'd be wonderful down the road if that's feasible. In the current economic situation, we're not sure if that is. So this would kind of work around that to both to improve simultaneously with getting this whole demonstration thing going. I mean, that's our goal. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Report.
Thank you. Ken, as a follow-up, as I read the bill, the word new technologies pop out.
Yeah.
But the citation of using crop waste and animal manure for fertilizing, that's been around for how many centuries? And then crop rotation, that's been a practice commonly known for, and even rainwater to fuel irrigation system. In other words, is it really new technologies, or you're applying old technologies of which we have overlooked and not really got up to speed with?
Well, to be honest, it's new technology for old problems. And actually, some of the faculty who stood on their written testimony are here and could, go into technical detail if you wish. But let me just really briefly cover what we're proposing to do initially, and that's look at R3 to R1 water reclamation using multi-layer soil process. And this is experimental stuff, so it should work, but it's experimental. So we've got the water reclamation piece. We have the conversion of organic waste into both biofuel and co-products which can be used as soil amendments, like biochar. And then as a third piece, we've got removal of pharmaceutical type waste and that type of water contamination through another bioreactor technology. And the bioreactor technologies are similar but different. And then we have greater plans. But does that kind of address what we're trying to do? And those are new, but they're existing problems, and you're right, there are much more expensive but unrealistic ways of dealing with them. We think these technologies actually are more economically feasible. But they are experimental.
I'll accept new with parentheses around it.
Okay. Long answer for that.
I think quotation marks.
Oh, yes, with quotation marks, I stand corrected.
Thank you, Representative.
Members, other questions? Okay, with that, let's move on to HB 2256, relating to the Environmental Response, Energy and Food Security Tax Repeal Date. Okay, first up, we have Scott Enright, Department of Agriculture, in support.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. Ken Kakisako for Scott Enright, Department of Agriculture. So the department is in strong support of this measure. This is an administration bill, so we are in support. We did want to say that there is a growing public sentiment that realizes that as an island state, Hawaii is precariously dependent on imported food and energy. The legislature responded to this movement by passing Act 73, Session Laws of Hawaii 2010, and as part of that act, the Agricultural Development and Food Security Special Fund was created. In that fund, we've been mandated to fund activities to increase agricultural production or processing that may lead to reduced importation of food, fodder, or feed from outside the state. And the department has moved forward with this mandate and has funded positions and programs to preserve agricultural lands, repair irrigation systems, lower the costs of farming, and raise both the supply and demand of local food. We would like to continue moving forward with this effort and view the Environmental Response, Energy and Food Security Tax as a vital revenue source to provide the resources to realize the goal of greater food security and self-reliance. We would defer to the Department of Business and Economic Development and Tourism as to the resource strategy to align with the state's 2030 clean energy goals. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. We'll be here for any questions.
Thanks, Ken. Gary Gill, Department of Health. Support.
Morning, Chair Uli. Members of the committee. My name is Keith Kawok. I'm with the Department of Health Hazard Evaluation and Emergency Response Office, testifying on behalf of Gary Gill, Acting Director for Health. The Department of Health strongly supports this administration measure. We feel that it will allow DBED and Department of Agriculture to continue the important activities in their efforts derived from the Environmental, Energy, and Food Security Tax. We feel that this extension from 2015 to just 2030 is an appropriate one, a reasonable one, given the state's goals to reach 2030 new energy renewable goals. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thanks, Richard Lim, Director, DBED.
Thank you, Chair Woolley and Vice Chair Nishi, members of the committee. As you know, Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative mandated some of the most aggressive goals for clean energy in the nation, and the State Energy Office is in charge with ensuring that we achieve those goals, and we have a broad portfolio of statutory responsibilities in that regard. The transformation of clean energy is going to require tens of billions of dollars, and it's really our office that's responsible for this. I think to date we've been extremely successful. We're a model for the nation. We've proven that we can put clean energy install clean energy in a cost-effective manner, but now it comes down to how do we integrate it into the grid, and that's a huge challenge that's going to be with us for the next generation or so. It's a good challenge, but it's a challenge nevertheless. And the Barrel Tax funds our office that is really responsible for overseeing this, as well as the implications that clean energy will have on the rest of our energy ecosystem, such as our refineries and things like that. So you're talking about a huge, massive transformation of our energy regime, which will cost billions of dollars, and the Energy Office is responsible for this. We need this funding to maintain our staffing, and it runs out in 2015. And hopefully we don't lose people in the meantime because of the lack of funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Rochiliao. In support. Audrey Newman, Hawaii Green Growth, in support. Nature Conservancy. And aloha, Mark.
Good morning. Mark Fox from the Nature Conservancy. Good morning, everyone. We too are in support of this bill. We think it was good sound policy when you implemented it. We think it's good sound policy to continue it out to 2030 to help us achieve our goals in clean energy, local food production, addressing oil spill response needs. In the way that you have put resources towards watershed protection in recent years, you're going to consider bills to put more resources towards invasive species. This, too, is about making us more self-reliant and resilient to the kinds of things that are occurring in our world today, changes in our climate, potential disruptions in shipping, things like that. So these three things that you are doing are top priorities. And indeed, you just mentioned testimony and support from the Hawaii Green Growth Working Group. And that Hawaii Green Growth Working Group is about 30 or 40 individuals and organizations from natural resources, energy, agriculture, waste reduction, and sustainable communities from both the public and private sectors that have come together to support each other and work on these kinds of things. And the three top legislative priorities that working group identified were this measure, funding for watershed protection, and additional funding for invasive species control. So again, I want to thank you for making those things a top priority and lend our support to that as well.
Great, thank you. Tax Foundation of Hawaii, comments? Sierra Club of Hawaii, in support. And we also have some late testimony. Blue Planet Foundation, in support. Chris Manfredi, Hawaii Farm Bureau. Brian, aloha.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of Chris Manfredi, President of Hawaii Farm Bureau. The Hawaii Farm Bureau does support this measure. We do support the barrel tax. Interestingly enough, as an organization who normally opposes taxes, we did support this and we continue to support. So we do support the extension of the sunset date. You have my written testimony, and you heard a lot of testimony here, so I'll wrap it up. We just want to point out that we believe that maybe the economy is rebounding, and it may be time to restore the original amounts to agriculture and energy. If not, maybe take into consideration last year's proposal, and I think it was HB 857, 42.5 cents. But again, we do support this measure. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Brian. Ashley Lukens, in support. Sally Kay, in support. Is there anyone else here to testify on this measure? Okay, members, questions? Yes, Rep. Cachola.
The department, where are you going to get the funding? Is from the barrel tax? Are you going to increase it or share or whatever it is now?
I'm not sure who you're directing your comments to.
Whoever is going to propose the extension of this sunset.
So it's just an extension?
No, but the funding too is very necessary. Once you extend it from 2015 to 2030, there should at least be funding because you extend the term of So I want to know whether or not there will be funding necessary from 2016 up to 2030. And where will it be coming from? Barrel tax? Will there be any increase or not?
So, Representative, so the barrel tax sunsets, right?
Yeah.
In 2015, so they're asking to extend it to 2030.
I understand,
yeah.
But with another 15 years, will there be a possibility of additional increase or just remain it the same?
You bring up a good point, Representative. In fact, I think that makes the case that we should actually be increasing the percentage that we've been receiving because, by virtue of our success in reducing the use of oil, the barrel tax proceeds will actually drop. Yes. In fact, quite precipitously, because we're already on track to more than exceed our 2015 goals, which puts us number one in the nation by a wide margin. Unfortunately, in this case, there's perverse disincentives because the more successful we are, the less money we receive.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, same argument with smoking.
Sure. Mr. Lim? In Section 10, it mentions the Ag Development and Food Security Special Fund. Do you have the amount of money that's in that fund right now?
Nearly $5 million.
just under $5 million.
What has been the burn rate or the amount of expenditure average per year?
Representative Ward, the amount that we actually receive routinely has been about $3 million. Our budget's been slightly larger than that. Because there had been federal funds to help supplement this, the burn rate's been actually higher than what we received, but we're now living within our means. So our current budget is also in the supplemental year. We're asking for a ceiling to be raised for $1.5 million that's already been collected in the Energy Security Fund. That's part of the governor's package, not this bill.
So, Representative, we've actually had quite a bit more funds to begin with. I think we had something like $39 million in ARA funds over the previous years. That's been utilized now, and we're now living off the barrel tax funds. So we've actually had to reduce staff quite significantly just to meet our budget.
Related to that, but in a statement related to the fund, you noted that as we are ahead in the nation, doing very, very well, you mentioned integrating our renewable energy into the grid is going to take a generation. Did you mean solving the problem or just getting people to come online? Because if we don't know how to solve the problem, and it's going to take a generation to find out how to get all these loads and net metering and all that stuff, we're really behind in my estimation. So how did you mean the context is going to take a generation
well, it's
to
both, right?
integrate?
I mean, it's an iterative process. You don't, as you solve the problem for one level of penetration, you achieve that, and you get to the next level, and the next level, and the next level. Each one may require different solutions. We're really at the cutting edge of clean energy technology right now.
But my frustration is the lights here have maybe 5% max renewable energy, and Hawaiian Electric is shutting down, bringing more on when we got so little. And we're saying we've got a problem, it's going to take a generation. So my sense is we got to speed it. If we're going to spend the money, let's spend it wisely and speed it up so energy goes down in cost instead of going up, because ultimately that's the goal. Because if the energy in 2030 is still at the price that it is now, what will we have done? We've just exchanged one master for another. That's a bit of an editorial, but my point is when we keep this tax until 2030, we should be doing it with a view that consumers need to know that this is for wise things and not just nice, warm and fuzzy, we're renewable, and we're not actually mindful of their pocketbooks. That's my point.
Can I ask just a quick question to follow up on that? Who is responsible for upgrading the grid? Is it HECO, or will you be helping with that, or just so I can understand?
Well, HECO is responsible for
Okay. Sure. I'd love to get some solar in my house. I'm at 100% penetration, so just wanted to ask. Great.
How much do we collect in barrel taxes every year? Not $3.8 million.
No, that's to the Energy Security Special Fund.
Oh.
That's the 15 cents. So that's only 15 cents out of $1.05.
Yeah, so we collect about 40 or 50.
That's correct. It's over 40 million.
Okay, and then is there a need for a sunset date? Good question.
Not in our minds.
Not in my mind either. Thank you, Chair.
I thought that was the legislature's way of checking.
Okay, members, any other questions? Okay, thank you. With that, we will move on to our next measure, HB 1514, appropriating money for the containment of the coffee bearer borer. First up, Department of Agriculture. Thank you. William Ayala, Department of Land and Natural Resources. In support. Aloha.
Aloha and good morning, Chair Woolley, Vice Chair Onishi, members of the committee. My name is Joshua Atwood. I'm the Invasive Species Coordinator for the Department of Land and Natural Resources, testifying on behalf of William Ayala. The department is in support of this measure. We just wanted to note that there are a lot of invasive species bills this session, some of which would fund the Hawaii Invasive Species Council, which is interagency. And I wanted to make sure that we're clear that the coffeeberry borer typically has not been an issue that's been funded by the Invasive Species Council. The Department of Agriculture has handled this as a departmental issue, so we very much support funds going directly to the Department of Agriculture for this purpose. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'll be here if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Apple, UH, in support.
Stand on the testimony in support.
Thank you. Chris Manfredi, Hawaii Farm Bureau, or Brian, in support.
Hawaii Farm Bureau stands also for testimony in strong support. Like Bill McNamee, Shelton Compton, again, we need to address this problem and we need to preserve our iconic Hawaii coffee brand.
Ken Grace, in support.
Yes, stand on the testimony in strong support.
Julia Parrish, in support.
Stand on testimony.
Great. David Case, in support. James Simpliciano, in support. Jim Wayman, in support.
And then my testimony in support for the Hawaii Coffee Association.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christine Andrews, in support. Christina Lizzie, in support. Don DeShane, in support. Eve Hogan, in support. Jerry Ross, support. Luis Dilberto, support. Lynn Howe, support. Wayne Katayama, in support. Ellen Cochran, in support. Joseph Kahn, in support. Glenn Hinton, in support. Gloria Biven, in support. James Kimo Falconer, in support. Maria Holmes, in support. And then we have a whole list of additional late testimony. Is there anyone else here to testify on this measure? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and yeah. Oh, yes, please come up, Pamela. Mahalo. Thank you, and yeah, we have a lot of guys in support. So if you are here to testify, go ahead and stand up and let me know. I'm not going to go through every name.
Vice Chair and Committee, thank you so much. I'm testifying for Vince Mina, who's president of the Hawaii Farmers Union United, and we are in support of this bill. How many of you had your coffee this morning? Yeah, exactly. I did, I know. And, you know, Hawaii, we always talk about being global in this world, and I think our coffee can make us global. Even though it's a niche market, it brings us out into the world, and this is just so important that we fund this and that the Department of Ag takes care of it, and, you know, as much funds as we need that can be given to the farmers to apply this fungicide, the very, whatever, sorry.
The medicine.
The medicine, yes. The organic medicine to put on it so we can all get up every morning and drink our Hawaii coffee and go to work happy.
Look who buys from a local roaster.
And we sell it at all 5 of our markets. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Did I remind everybody to buy local? Okay, thank you. Anybody else here to testify today on this measure? Okay, thank you. Members, questions? Yes, Representative Choi.
Yeah. Every time I talk to you, I learn something. And you've always taught me that you've been trying to get rid of termites for 50 years. And
they're gone. You haven't noticed?
And they're still here. So, okay, so I look at the word control and containment. That's not elimination, right?
The coffee, yeah, you're right, Representative. I mean, the coffee berry borer is everywhere in the world where they grow coffee. We got it very late in the game in 2010. But it's become an enormous pest, and the Coffee Association can tell you all about that. Since then, now, yeah, you're right. We're not going to eradicate that pest. But what we have to do is keep it down as far as we can and keep it from going where that conspicuous coffee bag in front of you is from. Why? Where half the coffee is grown in the state. So we really need containment, and we really need to stop the spread, make the farming profitable. So that's the goal here. There have been a lot of very recent discussions between UH, the industry, and the Department of Ag on exactly how to best do that. And there's a strong outreach training component, so people do the right things.
So given enough time, maybe 2 more years, you'll eliminate the termite?
You and your termites. Got this fellow too, termites. Well, you know what? I've been working on termites since...
That's right.
Well, I was in the business in the 1970s, Representative. And we actually have at least 2 really good tools right now. So I actually think there's some hope. I actually do.
Remember, you're on camera now.
I think there's hope, but I don't know. I may be retired before that hope is realized.
Control and containment. That's what we're going for.
Yeah, that's what we're going for. Thank you.
Chair.
Yeah.
Sure, thank you. An excellent question. I think it's one of the challenges with invasive species is once they get here, it is nearly impossible to eradicate, and it becomes a constant expense. And that's why the prevention part is really going to be the focus this year as well. So thank you guys for your testimony. Any other questions, members?
Sure, follow up briefly to Ken or
Representative
to
Ward.
the industry. What percentage of the coffee crop are we losing per year because of the berry borer?
Jim, once you come to the microphone, please. Thanks.
How much are we losing per year? As a percentage, just your guesstimate.
Right at about 20%. To give you a quantitative number, I run one of the largest mills on the Big Island. Last year at this time, our infestation rate at the end of the season was 28% of all coffee that came through the door had coffee berry borer in it. And that was up from the first year that it was discovered, 2010. It went from 5% to 28% in 2 years.
Now it's down to 20.
This year, overall, it's down to about 20. And that comes from a lot of outreach and education put on by the Department of Ag and CTAR Extension over in Kona, as well as all the coffee associations banding together and educating farmers, because the real mission here is there is 2 chemicals. Bacillus bassiana is the official name. It's a fungicide. You spray that on the coffee cherries, and when the CBB migrates and tries to bore into the cherry,
CBB is
coffee berry borer beetle.
That's central. Thanks.
When it attempts to bore into the cherry, that fungicide gets on the CBB and literally eats him. So that's effective in migrating CBB. The problem really, though, is cultural, and it's farm sanitation. Because the analogy I always use isn't termites, it's fleas. I come from California where fleas on dogs is a big problem. Not so much here. But your dog goes to the beach and gets the fleas. He comes home and gets them in the house. You take him outside and scrub him with flea solution. He comes back in the house and gets it. You take him out and bomb the house. He comes back in and puts him back in the house. The only way to cure this is wash him, bomb the house, and don't take them back to the beach. CBB is very much like that. They live on in the coffee cherries that fall to the ground during the season, and any coffee cherries left on the trees that aren't sanitized, they stay there. So when the flower sets and the new cherries come out and turn red it's like a bull for CBB. Red is the signal to fly. And then they fly up and they migrate into those cherries again, and the whole cycle starts again.
So why don't you spray the ground?
It's not that simple, because the fungicide isn't effective down there, and most spray-on type topical chemicals don't help because they're inside of the cherry at that point, so the topicals don't get to it. So it's really, at the end of the season, clean the trees off, pick everything off the ground. When the flower sets, within 90 days of the flower set, spray the fungicide on, but pray that your neighbor is going to do that, because if your neighbor doesn't, there's the flea in the house that is going to come over and get in your house. So what we're proposing in this bill might sound like a lot of money. It's $3 million. However, we figure that $3 million would cover all of the Big Island all at one time. So you get that dose of wash the dog, bomb the house, get them all knocked down and under control, get them down under 5% or so, and then it's livable to the industry. To address your questions about the whole world, Colombia had a very bad CBB problem a number of years ago. They now have it down to, on an annual basis, of less than 2%. And they're following the same guidelines that I just explained to you.
So with this $3 million next year, you can report to us what percent that you're back to?
I think if we do the job, if we get the $3 million, Ken and his group does all the outreach, the Department of Ag gets a subsidized Baciana out to all the farmers, and we get buy-in, I could be sitting here next year telling you it's under 5%. And at under 5%, it doesn't damage the industry to the point where it's near collapse. I can tell you from my own experience, going into last year, typically it takes 5.5 pounds of coffee cherry on a tree to make 1 pound of green coffee. Last year in our mill alone, that rate of conversion went up to 8. That difference between 5.5 and 8 on 4 million pounds of cherry at green coffee value was $700,000 that I lost in potential saleable coffee value. I'm just one mill that buys about 20% of the crop. So you could extrapolate that out times 5. The industry lost $4 or $5 million at least last year in saleable value, and that was just at green coffee level. That doesn't take it all the way up to roasted coffee or cups of coffee in a store or restaurant.
So coffee farmers are not getting rich?
They're not getting rich. No.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any other questions? All right, let's move to the next measure, HB 1932. First up is Department of Agriculture.
How much do they make?
Morning, Chair and members of the committee. Ken Kakiosako for the Department of Agriculture. The department supports this measure. We just wanted to raise offer one amendment. In Section 3 of the bill, it is asking for, funds to come out of the Pest Inspection, Quarantine, and Eradication Fund. Currently, by statute, that's where funding for the biosecurity program comes from, so we just believe that portion is unnecessary. But I'll be here for any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. William Ayla, DLNR.
Stand on my red testimony in support.
Thank you. Alicia Mulafiti, Hawaii Crop Improvement Association, in support. Nature Conservancy, in support.
Can I say just a couple of comments?
Yes,
and then I'll
please.
stand on all the rest of my testimonies, I promise.
No problem.
Thank you, Chair. Mark Fox again from the Nature Conservancy. And apologize, we did not get testimony in on the prior bill, and just would like to add the Nature Conservancy's voice in the chorus of support for that. On this measure and the next three, we also want to add our voice of support to the legislature's making invasive species and funding for invasive species prevention, control, early detection and rapid response, outreach and research a priority this session. We are extremely grateful for that. We are supportive of this bill and the next three going forward. The one thing I'd like to raise with you, though, is that as you work through these bills and send them through the Finance Committee and back and forth with the Senate, please do your best to make this funding additive and not a shifting around of money between really important invasive species programs. I hate to use the analogy of shifting the deck chairs around in the Titanic, but a little bit of that has occurred here in the legislature before. An example of that was FY 2007. The legislature provided specific money for coqui frog control. That was an important thing to do, but it was a moving of money away from other invasive species priorities to address coqui frog control, which was also important. But the result was that actually some of the island invasive species committees had to lay off staff because they had reduced funding for some of their other important work. Last year, the legislature was extremely gracious and provided $8.5 million in general funds, combination of general funds and CIP funds for the Watershed Protection Initiative, the Rainfall is the Forest Initiative. Again, we are extremely grateful for that, and that's an important initiative to protect the core of our watersheds where we get most of our water from. But at the same time, in the budget, the legislature also reduced the spending ceiling to the DLNR's Natural Area Reserve Fund by about $2 million, which also funds sort of the base operations for watershed protection and invasive species work by the state. So we appreciate the challenges and the financial decisions you all need to make, but please do your best to make it additive as much as you can. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we also have some late testimony. Let's see. Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, I'd like to adopt the words of the previous speaker as if they were my own. The Hawaii Farm Bureau is in strong support of this measure. Koki frog, coffee berry borer, macadamia felted coccyid, veromite, brown tree snake, little fire ant, coconut rhinoceros beetle. Just a few of these invasive species. As a chair referenced in one of the previous bills, prevention. So this bill addresses prevention, or biosecurity addresses prevention, and also controls once they get here. So, we are in strong support. I mean, not just agriculture, but the environment is impacted by invasive species. So as the previous speaker said, we are in strong support of this bill and the next several bills that are coming up, and we really appreciate and applaud the legislature for their strong support of addressing this critical problem of invasive species. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Okay, thank you. Eric Tanaway, in support. Alan Gottlieb, Hawaii Cattlemen's Council, in support. Scott Murray, in support. Teya Penniman, Maui Invasive Species Committee, in support. Is there anyone else here to testify on this measure? Okay, members, questions? Representative Ward.
Department of Agriculture. A slightly different line of questioning in that the litany of all the bad species were just given. Do you have the other side, any light at the end of the invasive tunnel where, hey, we've stopped so many crocodiles or Himalayan caterpillars? Is there a chronology of the things that we have stopped because this program is successful?
Well, there's no brown tree snake in Hawaii.
Okay.
So that
we've kept that.
Let's keep it that way.
So that'd be the one I would point to.
But have we stopped things that, it says right at port of entry and other interception things?
I can double check, but just off the top of my head, Roger.
Knowing that success story, obviously when it gets to the Finance Committee, will be even more leverage.
Okay.
Not just, hey, we got all these problems, but hey, here's the success story. We got Amazonian piranhas that we stopped, or, something that gives you a sense of what we're doing and how successful it's been.
Okay.
And I'm assuming the stories are out there. Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
And I will just share with you that sometimes they don't necessarily want to educate people about the threats that we have narrowly missed, but I do know of many success stories, so.
Okay. If it has to be a closed committee hearing like Congress, only those who are limited to their, what do you call it, privacy, I would be grateful to hear about it.
Very good.
Sure.
All right. Yes, Representative Tsuji. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Department of Agriculture and Nature Conservancy. First of all, as a prelude, I believe that this legislation, is good, has good intents, but I have some questions and maybe observations that you could help me or maybe the committee with regarding this. Are you familiar, both of you or any of you, about this latest report that has come out by the auditor of the state of Hawaii in January regarding the Department of Agriculture? And it brings in DLNR also, but talking about special funds and in particular, what caught my eye is, if we may say, the barrel tax and also the cargo fee. With all the expenses that goes through let me see, the Food Security Special Fund, the revenues, and someone mentioned, about 4.8 or 3.8 million going in, still sustained for the past maybe about 3 fiscal years. The average balance outstanding or remaining at the end of fiscal is between, I would say, 4 million to 5 million. That's number one. And number two, I take special interest in this one here. It's the cargo fee and revenues, expenditures, year-end balance for the year 2010, 3.8, 2011, 4.2, followed up by 4.8 million, and finally, in 2013, 5.5 million. So, the gradual rise in the balance. And this particular legislation is for an appropriation, but how do you see what's happening to this fund? I thought maybe you can utilize it effectively and then coincide this with the the appropriations that this bill is requesting. With a final comment, and then maybe you can answer this. They are existing about in the Department of Agriculture about a half dozen different special funds with ceilings. And we talked today, especially in particular, about invasive species outreach funds. The ceilings anywhere from $2 million or $200,000, if my figures are correct, down to $50,000. $50,000, the lowest category, is for invasive species outreach. And maybe we've got to look at that, increase the amount or the ceiling or combine, or I don't know, I'm looking for suggestions, but I think we've been getting funds in. We should be responsible to look how, inflow goes with operating expenses, outflow, remaining balance, average balance. You got any comments, any of you, regarding that as it relates to this bill?
Sure. So, Representative, you did raise a good point. We are often limited by not so much the funding in special funds, but by the ceilings that are on some of these special funds. So we would be open to any discussion about raising those ceilings so that we can spend up some of that balance that is remaining in some of the funds that you did highlight. And so we'd be happy to look at that as well.
I'd offer the same thing. I'm not specifically familiar with the spending ceilings in the Food Security Special Fund or the Energy Special Funds at DBED, but I understand that the ceiling is somewhat lower than the revenue generation coming in. I am familiar with the spending ceiling on the DLNR's Natural Area Reserve Fund, and that's from conveyance tax revenue. And DLNR took in something on the order of $15 million in conveyance tax revenue into the Natural Area Reserve Fund in fiscal 13, and it had about a $7.2 or $7.5 million spending ceiling, reduced from a little over $9 million, and that ceiling is set by the legislature. So I understand the viewpoint of the legislature and the money committees about special funds and wanting to have more oversight over those. I encourage you to take it. Read the reports that these agencies send back to you on how they're spending their special funds, and if you want more information, I know DLNRs are very detailed. We contribute to them for the watershed and invasive species programs that we work on an annual basis and account for all the money that comes through our organization. But spending ceilings are an important issue, and making the best use of these revenues that you have provided for these purposes. So, I'd echo Ken's comments and encourage you to look at those spending ceilings and take more authority for asking for reporting on special funds, and treat them the way you treat general funds in terms of how you ask for accounting on how those monies are spent. It's odd to me that I hear around this building legislators say, oh, well, we don't look as closely at how special funds are spent in the way that we look at general funds. I'm like, really? That was a surprise to me last year.
Not anymore. Yeah, very good. Thank you.
If I may, one more question, sure. And call up the Invasive Species Council. Without re-elaborating my previous observation and question, the Invasive Species Council is an entity that is a recipient of a lot of these fundings and disperse it to the counties, the Invasive Species Committees. In particular, I see a lot of cry, and rightly so, but this has been happening over a decade. In other words, the infestation and now the uncontrollable effect of the fire ants. We have, again, this special fund. How do we utilize this when we say we got a catastrophic occurrence like the fire ants proliferating? Can these special funds be utilized for immediate rapid reaction control or rapid action control instead of waiting for the legislation to go through?
I would say that it depends on the special fund you're referring to. If it's some of the Department of Agriculture special funds, I wouldn't have authority to speak directly on those special fund uses, but that's something that might be under their purview, since they do provide oversight to the Hawaii Ant Lab and have multiple little fire ant programs within their department. For the Hawaii Invasive Species Council, we actually don't have a dedicated special fund source. And so this year we're requesting general funds, which is a bill we'll talk about in just a minute. But that's the best method for the Invasive Species Council to receive and disperse funds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Wood.
I just want to make a footnote to thank Mr. Fox raising the voice of the late Lowell Kalapa about it's your responsibility to look at special funds. We have not done that, and unfortunately the budget generally pays strict attention to general funds. But you reminded us of Lowell Kalapa, who every session reminds us. Special funds, you guys may as well retire because they're self-perpetuating in terms of the money coming in and the money going out, and with very little oversight. That's a confession from the Finance Committee member here.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
How many special funds are there? Do you remember?
There are 40% of our budget is special funds. We got a $12 billion budget, and 40% is special funds, which means we've got not a blind eye, but we got kind of a glancing rather than really a supervisory accountability role that we're not doing.
I like them. They are a good method of doing what you are all trying to do. May I?
Sure.
Briefly. And I apologize for taking that liberty.
No problem. We like hearing from you.
Thank you. It's very kind. My wife, tell my wife. They are an extremely useful tool for achieving the kinds of goals you want to achieve with energy goals, food security goals, invasive species and natural resource protection goals. It allows agencies and their partners like us to plan ahead and look forward in terms of our attack on these kinds of things, both the positive, achieving the positive goals and dealing with the negative problems. Also allows us to go out with some assurance of being able to leverage non-state funds to make these things happen. The tools you have for making sure that special funds are looked at as closely as general funds, yes, use those spending ceilings, but also pay attention to them so that you're allowing the policies that you want to achieve to occur if the spending ceiling is set at a proper level. So I don't think we should demonize special funds because we haven't been paying that close attention to them or that there's so much money set aside to them. Pay close attention to them and make sure that they're being used for the important policies that you set them up for in the first place. The auditor has routinely, and I appreciate the auditor's opinion and evaluate it, the auditor has routinely said that the Natural Area Reserve Fund and its source of the conveyance tax isn't a rational or logical nexus. Respectfully disagree. The more we buy and sell real estate in the state of Hawaii, the more we develop real estate in the state of Hawaii, that puts pressure on our natural resources, our forests and watersheds and the water supply coming to them. The legislature made a determination in, I think it was a 2005 or 2010 session, and I can cite the legislative history for you, that there is a logical and rational and direct nexus between the conveyance tax and funding the natural resource preservation and protection of these islands. So, again, we can have discussions about special funds and their pros and cons, but I think you guys have all the tools you need available to you to make the wisest use of them, and you have made very wise decisions about them with respect to the conveyance tax and the barrel tax and how to address these issues. And I'd encourage you to, keep looking closely at them, but also continue to allow their use. I think they're an extremely useful tool. And with respect to the conveyance tax and the Natural Area Reserve Fund, consider adding invasive species as a designated beneficiary of the Natural Area Reserve Fund and the conveyance tax. As Josh pointed out, invasive species control and prevention and all those activities under the HISC does not have a dedicated source of funding. That's why they're asking for general funds. Last year there was a bill.
Actually, I'm going to stop you right there. Thank you. And we really need to focus on what's in front of us. And I think that I want to recognize Chair Tsuji's former efforts on alien species, because he really did try to raise awareness at a critical time when funding was cut by the former administration. And I think we're seeing the effects of those cuts. I mean, this is, as the governor said in his opening day speech, we are in a biological crisis. So I really appreciate all this discussion. And I think the point that I'm hearing from everybody is let's not be penny wise and pound foolish. So with that, members, any other questions? All right, let's move on to HB 1716. And first up, Department of Agriculture. Thank you. William I. Law, DLNR.
Good morning again, Chair and members of the committee. Josh Atwood on behalf of William Isla for DLNR. I just want to provide some very brief context for this bill. The Invasive Species Council, for those who are not familiar, is an interagency board established by the legislature in 2003. And though it is comprised of 6 state departments, including DLNR, Department of Health, Transportation, Department of Agriculture, DBET, and the University of Hawaii, it is administratively housed within DLNR. The request in this bill, just to provide some context on the amount, was derived at a meeting last fall where we talked to invasive species practitioners, the ones out there actually doing the on-the-ground invasive species work, and we talked about what is the amount needed to avoid lost progress and capacity in critical projects for invasive species, prevention, control, outreach, and research across the state. And that's how we arrived at a supplemental $5 million figure. This would be added to the $750,000 in general funds that was appropriated last year and the first year of the biennium. As I mentioned in my previous testimony, we do not have a dedicated special fund source, so we're looking for general funds this year as a truly interagency funding source to support this work. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'll be here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jesse Suki, DPP, comments. Julia Parrish.
I need to stand on my testimony to support.
Okay, thank you. The Nature Conservancy. In support. Sierra Club of Hawaii. In support. Napualani Wong. In support. Lynn Howe. In support. And we have late testimony, Chris Manfredi, Hawaii Farm Bureau, or Brian.
Chairman Scott, our testimony is in support.
Okay, mahalo. Taya Penniman, Maui Invasive Species Committee. Thank you. In support. Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else here to testify on this measure? Okay. Thank you. Members, questions? Representative Ward.
To DLNR, I totally support this amount and the logic behind it. And given it's important, why is it not in your DLNR budget? Or was not in the budget?
The original supplemental budget request for DLNR this year did include $5 million in general funds. It was adjusted by Budget and Finance down to $1 million. But given...
You couldn't persuade them, huh?
Actually, they decreased it to 0. We persuaded them to bump it back up to 1.
They increased it to 0.
Decreased it to 0, and then we got it to 1. But given recent events, including the discovery of little fire ant on Oahu and Maui in December 2013, both the governor and DLNR have endorsed the $5 million appropriation in the joint priority package.
Okay, so everybody's behind you, not just us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
They didn't yet see the movie.
Oh.
Okay. Any other questions, members? All right, let's move on to HB 2431, relating to the little fire ant. First up, Department of Agriculture. Thank you. Okay, William I. Law, Department of Land and Natural Resources, or Josh Atwood.
Stand on our testimony in support.
Okay, great. The Nature Conservancy.
We'll stand on our testimony.
Tim Lyons, Hawaii Pest Control.
We'll stand up and give our testimony.
Okay.
Actually, Chair, members of the committee, I'm not sure it's so much testimony as it is a policy statement. We support the general intent of the bill, but we would really employ you to consider the use of the private sector. I mean, ants is not a new pest that they need to deal with it. They deal with it today. Our members on the Big Island have already getting calls, some calls on fire ants when it involves individual home property. So our people are already trained. The company is licensed. The individuals are certified. There is no certification of state employees. There is no licensing of state employees. There is no mandatory training of state employees. So the private sector, I think, is well equipped to deal with this, and we know that it's quickly getting out of control. We really don't want to see a situation where the farmers won't be able to harvest their bananas and papayas. because they can't touch it. So we really think the need for a pilot project, as stated in this bill, is questionable unless you want to turn around and isolate two different areas and let the appropriation take care of one and the private sector take care of the other and see who does the better control. We'd be happy to participate in that. But, you know, we think that, I don't know if you saw the news last night, but there was a lady on the news who was complaining about the ants in her condo. And unfortunately, she also testified that she had used every single pesticide she could find over the counter, and none of them had worked. And that's because it's kind of like medicine, you know, the stuff you can get over the counter is not as good as the stuff you get prescription-wise. So this is the same kind of thing. So we support additional resources to combat the little fire ant problem, but we really wish you would employ the people that are already there to handle the problem. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Lynn Howe, in support. Okay, we have some late testimony. Lori Buchanan, Molokai Maui Invasive Species Committee.
We said in support.
Okay, thank you. Chris Manfredi.
Stand on testimony, strong support.
Eric Tanaway, in support. Julia Parrish.
I stand on testimony in support.
Thank you. And Taya Pennyman, in support. Sure.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Taya Penniman, manager of the Maui Invasive Species Committee, and we're delighted at the attention that the little fire ant is receiving at the legislature. There are a number of bills to address it. Wanted to comment on a couple of earlier questions as well, that there have been a number of successful eradication stories. The invasive species committees are actually quite good at taking on targets that we can eradicate, and we are very much focused on rapid response. So even though we know things get past the border, that is what our staff are trained to do, is to go out and do rapid response out in the communities. As far as the little fire ant goes, there are a number, as I said, there are a number of different bills. I want to highlight that, as you all know, little fire ant has been detected in December on both Maui and Oahu, and it appears that little fire ant has now been found at multiple sites on Oahu, perhaps as many as 10 or more. So it's more than just a few stores. A piecemeal approach to this problem is not going to work. And I kind of see all these different bills as kind of being piecemeal approach. Yes, we need outreach. We need research for more effective control methods. That is being done by the Hawaii Ant Lab and by UHCTAR. We need surveys, including detector dogs. There are ant sniffing dogs that can find a single little fire ant. We need more inspectors and more plant pest control staff at the Department of Agriculture. And we can expand support for the rapid response teams under the invasive species committees. And we need regulations that are a combination of the carrot and the stick to address the problem, including projects such as little fire ant free certified businesses, similar to a program we have on Maui related to the koki frog. Or best management practices that the Department of Agriculture is already developing and implementing. So all of those things are needed, but it needs to be in a coordinated approach, not one or two bills here or there, or I think it's not going to work. The other thing that I want to echo what Mark Fox said, and also what Josh Atwood said, is that this funding should be additive and not in lieu of. And also the HISC funding, that $5 million amount that was originally proposed, did not include the concept of little fire ant at the time. We did not know at that time that it was moving. So I'm hopeful that our legislators are not going to assume that by funding the HISC at $5 million, you're going to take care of the little fire ant problem. You're not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Okay, members, questions?
Chair.
Representative Warren.
Who knows what the amount of money that's going to be inserted in there? And it's blank right now for solving the problem. The Invasive Species Council has an estimate of what this would be? It's a blank amount. How much does it cost to do statewide public outreach and awareness education program on the little fire ants?
Eleanor?
Give us a ballpark if you have one.
So we weren't involved in the creation of this bill, and so as far as a blank amount specifically for public outreach, we don't have a figure prepared. Ballpark, we would be talking probably a couple $100,000 to produce multimedia materials and then have television and radio time to promote the message that's developed.
And does the department have a position that Mr. Lyons said in the private sector, hey, call us, we can get rid of them, we don't have to do all this stuff, just we're on standby?
I would say that for control, we obviously welcome the involvement of the public sector in addressing little fire ant infestations in homes. This particular bill is for public outreach awareness, which is something that I think would be best coordinated through an entity like the Hawaii Invasive Species Council.
Outreach awareness question. What's the difference between a little fire ant and a little non-fire ant?
So there are actually over 40 non-native ant species that are established in Hawaii, and little fire ant is very different from the other ants you might find.
How do you know when you see one?
They're incredibly little, which is in the name. So they're a 1/16 of an inch long. They're as long as a penny is thick. They form super colonies that are interconnected with one another, and they're also an arboreal ant species. So in addition to nesting in the ground, they can also be in trees above your head, which is a particular problem for agriculture if you're harvesting coffee or macadamia nuts, because they can actually rain down onto you as you're harvesting your crops. The bite is incredibly painful. It lasts for days, and they can vary in dense colonies, infest homes, agricultural lands, beach parks. They're currently in a number of the county parks, which I believe is another bill we'll be talking about this morning on Hawaii Island. So it's a very difficult pest to detect when it's moving, and once it's established, it's very difficult to control.
Common over-the-counter pesticides don't do it, as someone testified?
So common pesticides will sometimes kill the worker ants, but the reproductive capacity with ant colonies is in the queen. And so the Hawaii Invasive Species Council and the Department of Agriculture have been funding the Hawaii Ant Lab in Hilo, which employs the world's foremost expert on little fire ant. And they've been working with a pesticide bait matrix that is something that the worker ants collect and then take back to the queen to kill the reproductive capacity of the colony, rather than just the worker ants that are invading your home.
I'm not sure I can tell the difference of that one and the 40, but I know that when I squirt the window cleaner on it, it kills them. So maybe they're not ready. So this is not
Well, I hope for your sake they're not little fire ants that you're finding in your home.
Thank you.
Okay, great. And Vice Chair.
Sure. I have another question in regards to this whole issue of the little fire ant. So obviously it was detected on the Big Island. So what efforts did the Invasive Species Council do in order to develop what the protocols would be to ensure that it wasn't going to spread?
Sure. Yeah, it's a really complex problem. Little fire ant was detected on the Big Island in 1999. And it has since spread along the Hamakua coast, which unfortunately is a very popular area for nurseries and other commodities that end up being shipped into our island. So there's actually been an infestation on the north shore of Kauai for about 10 years that's been controlled and contained into about a 5-acre infestation, and it's now being addressed. The Hawaii Invasive Species Council's involvement has been first to fund the Hawaii Ant Lab, which I mentioned is a Hilo-based group that employs both an entomological expert as well as some research technicians. They're the public's primary resource for little fire ant questions, and they also do the initial research on different pesticide use. The Invasive Species Council has also funded the eradication efforts on Kauai in Kulihiwai, and that project has been ongoing for about 3 years now, and they have seen a lot of success to date, but they're not at the point yet where they can consider it eradicated from Kauai. We are also part of the reason the legislature created the HISC is for interagency communication. So we're a forum for different department directors to get together and talk about these issues and to potentially share information, if not staff, for response. So this is an issue that is not only affecting Department of Agriculture, it's something that has the potential to impact natural resources, especially ground nesting birds. It's something that impacts tourism under DBET, because if we have little fire ants infesting Waikiki Beach and the hotels down there, that's going to be an enormous impact to our economy. And it's also a health issue in that this is a species that has a very painful stinging bite. And so people, will often seek medical treatment for those things. It's also, if you've seen the video, it has a tendency to sting pets around the eyes and induces a condition where the cornea clouds over and often causes blindness in pets. So it's a very complicated issue that stretches across departmental mandates. And the Invasive Species Council has been a forum for different departments to talk about the ways that little fire ant impacts their mandate.
Well, I guess maybe I need to restate my question. So what was the protocols established by Invasive Species Council to stop the spread of the little fire ant? All you told me is what are the effects. You didn't tell me what Invasive Species Councils decided to do to say, we have this problem, we have to isolate it, we have to keep it from spreading, these are the things that farmers got to do, this is the stuff we got to do to educate people, to stop it from spreading. I mean, that's why it spread. Sure. If you don't have any protocols to address, in general, invasive species, and how are you going to address it immediately, how are you going to stop the spread?
So to answer your question a little bit better, the Invasive Species Council has funded control capacity to go out and control ants in areas where they're infesting, and we have funded the development of pesticide technology to control the ants. As far as regulations for inter-island movement of goods that might contain ants, that's more of a departmental issue under the Hawaii Department of Agriculture. Little fire ant has been a topic of interagency discussion at HISC meetings. But as far as increasing capacity for inspectors, for example, for goods that are moving inter-island, that's something that the HISC supports, but it's not under our authority to amend.
So, for over 10 years, the issue was Department of Ag should have established some protocol, or was directed by his to establish a protocol for the transportation of potential carriers of the little fire ant?
The Department of Agriculture has existing regulations about, phytosanitary certificates for nursery goods that are moving inter-island. But the problem with this pest is that it's so incredibly small, and an entire reproducing colony can fit in something as small as a kukui nut. And so for the current inspector capacity to be able to effectively stop that moving inter-island is incredibly difficult.
Can I have Department of Ag come up, please? Chair, if I could.
Sure.
So, Department of Agriculture, so what was your protocol established to stop the spread of the little fire ant?
So basically, as Josh has pointed out, the Department of Agriculture does control plant material that moves between islands, but the little fire ant is especially mobile in that it can also travel on vehicles that go inter-island as well, and we do not control that type of movement as well. So it is problematic. It is something we're taking a look at to see how we can revamp that. And as we've seen in previous testimony on other bills, our inter-island movement of different goods does need to be taken a look at, and so our plant quarantine department is taking a look at that to see how that can be changed and improved.
Yeah, I think it's very troubling for me because we went through the same issue with the coqui frog. You would think that we would have established some general protocols when we have an invasive species that comes to Hawaii that we know can be transported from one island to another, or from one business to another, or from a business to the public, similar to the coqui frog. And what I hear is there's nothing established. I mean, we know vehicles carried the coqui frogs to other islands, right? So wouldn't it make sense that Invasive Species Council will say, hey, we got to come up with some kind of protocol to either educate the community or to educate or to work with people who are transporting vehicles from island to island, or plant material from island to island, even inter-island. But there's none. I have a hard time understanding, how we're going to address this. What's the next thing that's going to come to Hawaii that no protocol or general protocol is established for us to address it?
So one initiative we can point to, Representative, is that actually through the HISC, we are doing an initiative called Mamalu Poi Poi, which is looking at a lot of the different entry and exit points where invasive species are being transferred. That's an effort also being currently actually funded by the Department of Transportation. They put up $300,000 to start looking at how we can best control that. So the HISC has been helpful in creating that forum where we can interact and engage with our sister agencies to try and come up with more collaborative efforts that can address some of the concerns that you're validly raising.
And what about the federal agencies?
Federal agencies have provided funding for invasive species work in Hawaii. I can't speak to the amount they've provided specifically for little fire ant, but they're often used as matching funds for...
Well, I'm not talking about the funds. I'm talking about the interagency cooperation. For example, right? I think the general public feels like the rhinoceros beetle came in through Hickam. And they have their own inspection protocols and manpower issues and the like. But what's the communication and the working partnerships with the federal government? You talk about the brown tree snake. The brown tree snake, from my understanding, is not really a Hawaii state initiative. It's a federal initiative, right? It's Customs and the Department of Agriculture, right? USDA. It's not really, we don't really do anything regarding brown tree snake because we don't get the stuff from Guam that you have to inspect. So, yeah, we've kept it out, but it isn't the state who did it. It's the federal government who's working on it.
Well, that again is a partnership, so we do partner with our federal partners on that. So we have training that we send our inspectors over to Guam to learn about brown tree snake, how they move, and how to look for that. So you're right, the funding does come from the federal government mainly, but we do have efforts to work with them and partner with them. And I guess also at our HISC, we do have some federal partners who do join us. I'm not familiar, I think APHIS does join us on some of those meetings as well, but we are working to improve communication with APHIS and with our federal partners so that we can be a little more collaborative moving forward.
I think for many of our colleagues, the issue is, how come we're not on top of this? We've gone through all kinds of pests, and granted there's been some successes, but, it's sort of, for I think me and people in the public, it's like the state has dropped the ball on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Tokioka.
Sorry, Chair, I was outside speaking with the individual outside. So sorry I missed part of it, but Ken, this problem with these invasive species, it just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. So from the coqui frog that came from the Big Island, I know the HISC group and especially for my purposes or our purposes from Kauai, they've done an excellent job. They contained it. We don't have the colony anymore. In Kalihiwai, there was the fire ant that showed up in a colony there. Has the department come up with a focus on, look, we need to address these areas that these invasive species are coming in, and this is how much money we need, legislature. If I'm the ag chair or the governor, I'm saying, look, this is the problem. Nobody in the state of Hawaii on any island wants these, whether it's the rhinoceros beetle, the coconut, the beetleberry borer, the fire ant, the coqui frog. No island wants those species. So has the department said, look, if we can secure our transport areas this way, this is how much it's going to cost, legislature. Figure out how we can fund it. Has the department come up with a number like that?
Yes, so we are looking at that. So actually at the biosecurity, I think previous bill, there's a biosecurity funding to go into the biosecurity efforts to going on. The number that we're coming up with at this point is $7 million for that, and that's to deal with the initial invasive species impacts that we have, as well as to create new biosecurity type facilities that can be able to be sort of these central type of areas that can capture
because
some of
if we don't stop them now, there's one colony, and I think they're controlling it as best they can on Kauai. You know, I know the Big Island is pretty short, and chickens are dying, cats are getting blind, dogs are getting blind. Is there a bill that the administration circulated to address that specifically?
So as far as an administration bill, there is no administration bill to do that, to address that directly. So, but we are looking at some of the other avenues that are coming through with us, and we will be in support of it.
There's 51 reps. I'm sure each one doesn't want any of these species in their district. So, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Sure, thank you. Representative Choi.
Real short. Are you saying for $7 million we can keep all the coqui frogs and fire ants off the? Is that
I should caveat that. So if you look at the 2002 study, the amount that was needed, the amount that was needed was $50 million. I think that to address all the invasive issues going on. And that was in 2002. So what we're talking about is dealing with the little fire ant, coconut rhinoceros beetle, and some of the ones that are really immediately popping up with us at this point.
$50 million.
Was back in 2002, I think, was the study.
Yeah, that was a Legislative Reference Bureau study.
Usually $50 million.
Yeah, 50 kind of makes sense, but 7, I'm thinking, why do we spend 7?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have caveated that.
Thank you very much, Ken.
Thank you. And actually, I have a question for you, Ken. And you have somebody on staff that is working on a plan. Carol is working on a plan right now.
Yes, we have her working on biosecurity.
Would it be all right if she came to talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. And you can go ahead and stay right there too.
Okay.
So, thank you. And I know that over the years, Carol, I've heard you talk on these issues and how the department was fighting fires all the time and having a very difficult time because of the cutting in your budget, and you already have a very small budget. So I just want to check in with you about this specific issue and get your thoughts about how we can be better. I think that's what we're hearing, like the Vice Chair's questions and developing protocol. How can we be better now?
Okay, so we do have a protocol, but it's only for our certified nursery program. And so we gave it to the nurseries back in 2008. We found, though, that although we do have it, they didn't have the capability to carry it out on their own. So in 2011, we applied for Farm Bill monies, and we got $250,000 for the first phase of the pest management systems approach, and that was given to Arnold Hara. With that $250,000, we did a pilot program on 11 nurseries on the Big Island, and we found it tremendously reduced the amount of little fire ant, coqui, other pests significantly. And so we applied for phase 2. It was supposed to branch out, and by phase 3, it was to capture and put it within plant quarantine. So that was all going to be funded by Farm Bill money, federal money. At the same time, since we knew it was working, we were going to branch out and do the cut flower and herbs and vegetables. And so we had given out our share of the barrel tax to give to the ant lab to handle the fruit crops. And that's how we were working within the production areas to lower the infestation. At the same time, we were looking at quarantine treatment areas so that although you lower the production, you still want to make one final so it doesn't spread, whether it's export or whether it's inner island. And so that has always been the case. The HISC is going to be important, especially in invasive species councils, is because that you still need the areas beyond the ports and beyond the production areas to capture that. And so, like Mark was saying, the purpose of these bills are critical right now because it's not one agency alone that's going to be able to handle it. You know, it's something that we do have the ceilings within Department of Ag, although there was one area that we could have changed it to carry them out. So the ceilings for Department of Ag for the plant quarantine side is 4.5 from the cargo.
Let me just try to get some more practical information, I think, for the committee members in particular. So the little fire ant, there was one nursery identified who was shipping out hapu'u fern, and apparently they've identified that there have been 50 shipped out to different places, and we don't yet know where or who or anything, and that's part of the goal right now. So what is the process for identifying where those ants went and how we're going to get rid of them?
So our plant quarantine department, currently under acting manager, is actually doing trace fours. That's what they call, where they go to these distributor and see who they've sold them to, and then go to those different distributors and talk to them and see where they have sold them to. One of the problems we are facing is that even with some of these other distributors that we go to, we don't have the ability to ask them who and get records of who they've sold to. It's just a privacy sort of issue, and we're not able, especially when they're individuals. And that's why, so the other way we're trying to address it is going out with a campaign and to let people know that if you have bought hapu in this case, it doesn't have to be hapu like we mentioned. It can travel on any type of medium, not any type, but many different types of medium. But we are letting them know that if you have bought hapu, to please report it to our pest hotline, and then we can send people out there to check out, their site. And we have had people call in already, and we have sent out inspectors to look at their sites, and in some cases they have found LFA and they've eradicated it from those areas. So really we're looking to try and get the word out to anyone who, if they think they might have, and I think part of it might be is when they, like many of you say, there's many ants here already, and so maybe people think it's just another ant, and so they're not really reporting when they think they might have little.
Where do they report?
To the pest hotline.
What's the number?
643 PEST. Is that correct?
643 PEST.
Yeah.
Okay, and the peanut butter test.
Yes.
Does that really work?
Yes, it does.
So you put out some peanut butter on a stick.
Chopstick.
45 minutes.
And then and part of it is because they're so small, you would need to put it where you would think it helps if you put it where the fern was or the plant and the infested material was.
Okay, thank you. Can I call Tim Lyons? How can these agencies and all of our efforts better coordinate with the private sector to get you guys more active and involved?
Well, I think the first important thing is that they know that we exist.
Well, I think
I don't think they've gotten to that point yet.
Well, today I think maybe we change that.
I hope so.
So why don't we have a further conversation? But if you have any suggestions in particular, I think we'd like to hear them.
Okay, I'll be happy to.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, let's move on to the next measure. Actually, we're going to move on to the next measure, and it also is about little fire ants, so I bet you'll have a chance to say whatever you're concerned about. HB 2469, first up, Department of Agriculture.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'll be very brief. We are in support of this measure. We just wanted to mention that we do have the Hawaii Ant Lab that's currently doing a lot of that's outlined in this pilot project, and so we would suggest that this pilot project just work closely with the Hawaii Ant Lab.
Thank you. William Ayla, DLNR. Joshua?
Josh Atwood on behalf of William Ayla for DLNR. We have the same comment as Department of Agriculture. We do support this bill, especially as it pertains to control in county parks. But as far as testing pesticides, that is something that's currently being done by the Hawaii Ant Lab, and we would recommend coordinating any efforts between the county and Hawaii Ant Lab. Thank you.
Dennis Onishi, Council Member, Hawaii County Council, in support. Nature Conservancy.
Stand under testimony.
Okay. Tim Lyons.
We can find our testimony for the two bills.
In opposition. Lynn Howe.
In opposition?
In support. Oh, did you want to come testify?
No, we were supporting that.
Oh, okay. We have it in as opposition. Thank you for clarifying. Okay. And Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Hawaii Farm Bureau, especially on behalf of our 5 county chapters, strongly support this measure.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Okay.
Thank you, Taya Penniman again from Maui Invasive Species Committee. And just to repeat what I said before about the need for a coordinated approach overall to little fire ant, and also to follow up on the question about what is being done to bring people together to address inter-island biosecurity issues. HB 1994, which I believe has already passed out of this committee, would establish a task force on inter-island movement of pest species. And I think that that is a critical component to bring people together. It was something that was suggested to the HISC at least 2 years ago, I believe, to bring all the different groups together, including industry, including the shipping companies, including the different agencies and the island-based invasive species companies to try and work on the problem, because it needs everybody coming together to figure it out. Also, just for your information, the Hawaii Tourism Authority, we put in a grant this year to look at the issue of the inter-island movement of, in particular, little fire ant, and we received $40,000 from HTA to bring people together to start looking at what is the volume, what are the volume of goods that are moving, what are the nature of goods that are moving, that would be likely carrying the little fire ant. And so hopefully we'll be having good cooperation from all of the involved agencies and the industry on that report. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anybody else here to testify? Yes. Did you submit written testimony on this one?
I did. It was late.
Okay, we'll check. We'll double check.
Thank you so much. I'm Julia Parrish with the Oahu Invasive Species Committee, and we do support this bill with the comment that we hope that the counties incorporate the Hawaii Ant Lab in their research and control efforts, because as Josh Atwood had already stated, in the Department of Agriculture, there's already been extensive research on control methods. So,
okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, members, questions? Yes, Representative Ward.
Julia, a question. Before I compliment you, are there any koki frogs in Hawaii Kai?
Wow, that's a. We have been in partnership with the Hawaii Department of Agriculture to monitor nurseries in Hawaii Kai that have repeat introductions of koki frog.
So right now, to the best of your knowledge, there's none.
In the nursery that we are surveying, there has not been a detection of koki frogs within the past few months, but it is hard to get a detection in the wintertime, as only the male koki frog calls, and they call infrequently in cold periods.
So I still want to thank you, because there was an alert 3 years ago when even Representative Tsuji, the expert from the Big Island, came and spoke to the people about let's be alert to this, so the community was aware of it. So outreach does work. And they even had little, what is it called, a digital button you push, and it gave the sound of the koki frog so people could get an auditory orientation to it. Do you still have any of those left, by the way?
Yes, we have plenty. If you would all like
Could
them,
I order some? I want to put it before the neighborhood board. So we have to stay vigilant.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the whole educational outreach, which we do free. Well, we work already for the people of our districts, but keeping them aware of this. I still can't visualize giving them something about the red ants, because it's still... I got to see the movie, I guess, Chair.
It's an amazing film.
Thank
And
you.
I will drop some keychains off at your office.
Thank you for what you do, and hopefully every other island can do as successful as Hawaii Kai has been able to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Movie showing February 4th, 4 p.m., Capitol Auditorium. Okay, Representative Matsumoto.
Sorry, I know it's a little off topic, but can I have a quick question? Who do you call if you think you see a koki frog? Because I tried calling 3 numbers, and it was difficult. I know this is really off topic, I'm sorry. But the question was, is it wider or is it, thinner? And I go, as opposed to what? Because I caught something, are the toes long or not? And I go, in comparison to what? So when I called, I had a really difficult time, and I was a greenhouse frog, is that correct? But just for me personally to go through the process was difficult, and I took the time to click on multiple websites. So I don't know if there's a more streamlined process. Sorry, no, it's off topic.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Everyone can call the 643 PEST hotline, which is the Department of Agriculture hotline, and that's a toll-free number for outer islands. And especially for the outer islands, a great resource is to call your invasive species committee.
Okay.
And they have dedicated outreach staff and Koki crew that can help you identify.
And are those the normal questions, like, is it thin or fat? Does it have long toes or not?
I think, well, our protocol is definitely more detailed questions about the shape of the toes. In particular,
but I'm just saying for somebody who doesn't
the answer
know,
is yes.
when you're asked those questions, you're going, I'm not sure. So, and then so he said I could let it go, and I went, okay, if there's an infestation in Mililani, it's not my fault. I tried. So, but thank you.
There may be Koki frog in Mililani.
So, yeah, it's not my fault if there are.
Well,
so,
and I think what she's indicating is that, especially with new technology, photos, diagrams, pictures, that would be really helpful for the average person. Mm-hmm. So the more easy it is for us lay people to figure it out.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure. If I may add another compliment, that they did have a flyer. No, it was like a hand. We call it a handbill, or it was a nice. It showed the green tree frog next to the Koki frog, and Representative Matsumoto, you can see clearly the distinction of the nose and the toes because of the literature they have. Now, have you still got it? So that you guys have done a good job in distinguishing the two.
Mm-hmm. And pictures, I think sometimes taking a picture of what you see, and that can be mailed at least. So, okay, wonderful. Is there any other discussion? Any other questions, members? We're going to move to our last measure, HB 2076, relating to pest control. First up, Department of Agriculture.
Morning, Chair. Ken Sacco, Department of Agriculture. Just looking at this bill, we believe it may not be necessary. We just think that the current language, which says reasonably practicable, does give the department sufficient discretion. We'll be here for any questions.
Okay. Lynn Howe, in opposition. And late testimony, Eric Tanaway, President, Hawaii Floriculture and Nursery Association, in support. Okay, members, any questions? Okay, with that, we are going to recess for decision making. Mahalo. I was thinking we could also add airports. You and me. Okay, with that, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
They might kill it.
Okay, House Bill 2256, recommendation is to pass unamended. Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes aye. Any other members voting with reservations? Or no? Okay, Chair, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. HB 1514, appropriating money for the containment of the coffee bearer borer beetle. CBB. Say that 10 times. I'm going to recommend that we pass this as is. Any questions, comments? Thank you, Vice Chair.
Okay, House Bill 1514, recommendation is to pass unamended. Do I have any with reservations? Any members voting nay? Chair, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving to HB 1932, I'm going to recommend some changes just to remove the Section 3 that Department of Agriculture suggested was unnecessary and not actually accurate. So we'll just remove that and some technical amendments. And members, questions, comments? Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Okay, House Bill 1932, recommendation is to pass with amendments. Are there any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Okay, Chair, motion, recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving to HB 1716. I'm going to recommend we pass this as is. Goes to Finn next. Any comments, questions? Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Okay, House Bill 1716, recommendation is to pass unamended. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting nay? Chair, motion, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving to HB 2431, I'd like to defer this until next Thursday, 9:20 a.m. in this same room, room 312. Any questions? And moving to HB 2469, I'd like to recommend the same thing. We're just going to defer this until 9:20 a.m. Next Thursday, room 312. And final measure, HB 2076, I'm going to defer this measure. And with that, we are adjourned for this this agenda. And we are going to reconvene the earlier agenda, the 9 a.m. for decision making. And we have just two bills, HB 2017 and HB 1611. And after communicating and having a nice discussion with my members, I'm going to defer both of these bills indefinitely. And with that, we are adjourned. Mahalo.
What is it?
Remember, when your hands are dirty, wash your hands in water first. Then you put a squirt or two of soap. Scrub your hands for at least 20 seconds. Then wash all the dirt off with water.